This is Ralph Rivas, your host for this mini presentation. Normally I would have Larry with me, especially since this was actually Larry's issue that we're working on together, and he helped me get through it. But this is something that sort of affects us in the cloud. I'm covering it over here because it's a good idea to blog something that essentially doesn't have a solution in a single place. And hopefully this mini little presentation will be helpful to that end. Here's the use case. The use case is SharePoint search. SharePoint search has a REST API. In fact, let's go see it over here. And here we go. We have the SharePoint search API. REST overview over here is just the website on this link, which I'm pointing to right over here. Okay, so the concept over here is this API now, especially that we're on the cloud, can be used. There's probably more advanced forms of it, and I'm looking at you, Office Graph and everything else that's coming out. But while this is around, this is still something that's available. Needless to say, since this is on the cloud, this is also on-prem, and this is what we're trying to get to work. And it shows us a very simple thing. We're just doing an API call, as you can see, API search query, and you just put in these parameters on whatever program that you've got, and you can make it work. As we found out, it's simpler said than done. We were trying to figure out what we were trying to do is like, okay, let's say the results are going to be like 20,000 items back for whatever reason. It's going to be tons of items back. Can you imagine an app bringing all that stuff in and just basically bringing it all into the web page and then trying to figure out from that, okay, what the groups are, what the counts are of different things? Well, that's the problem. So Larry's problem, as it came to me, was that they are basically using this app, and they're just all they're trying to do is create little dashboards that say, oh, just give me a count of these particular groupings. All right. And so now, of course, the idea was, what is a grouping in SharePoint Search? And a grouping in SharePoint Search, according to the Microsoft folks, at least that we talked to recently, was a refinement. So the concept is to set up this thing here. It's called the refinement. All right, not a group by, not anything like that, just basically a refinement. We just had to get that to work. So how does that work exactly? So one Microsoft guy gave me this little code. Oh, sorry, let me get to the right one over here. So this oldie from 2014, and I have over here the link right up on top. Let me get it to show. All right, and in this one over here, he says, well, I looked at the Chris O'Brien. Oh, I have this one problem where it's so hard to scroll down. It's an IE Edge thing, where he basically said, okay, I looked at the Chris O'Brien blog, and Chris O'Brien's a very great SharePoint guy. Hopefully he'll be updating this for Office soon. At least I teased him on it. And over here he's showing, here's the refiner, here's basically what they're doing, and they're basically putting a refiner, and he gave me a little teeny function that says, here's what we're going to do to go over the refinement function. Okay, seems pretty straightforward, okay? So now I had to go look up the Chris O'Brien blog to see how that works. So let me, for example, go through that, and I'll open it up in a new window just so you can see it. And here was that blog right over here, how to do it and everything else. All right, that's fine. As I scroll down over here, it's showing basically how to do the REST API call. He's giving all the details. All right, you guys can look this up also as I show you the link. All this looks all fine and well. And essentially what he did was he took over this piece over here and said, okay, let's go. Now, here was the thing. This is what killed us. At least killed us initially. We're like looking at this code. It's like, oh, great. So this looks straightforward. Okay, we have this thing called SP.RequestExecutor. And it's just getting this context info of the absolute URL. And then it's calling the executor async item. And it's using that because essentially the concept over here at the time was to do basically a search from what was called a SharePoint add-in or SharePoint app provider-hosted app at the time, which is you're essentially somewhere else and you need to cross-domain to talk to a different place to get your information. So the concept of using the SP.RequestExecutor was essentially to add all the methods you need to like connect and do all those pieces and stuff. As a note, that sort of is a bit obsolete in our SharePoint framework method as of May of 2017. So we're probably going to see an update to this. That being said, this is the way that it was done back then. Okay, and it said, okay, just set that up and then you can just call it and everything else. Well, obviously, it seems straightforward. It's like, okay, let's do it. And then maybe let's go replace this code. It did not work. It basically failed horribly. So we tried different things over here to try to make this work. we tried taking a look over here. The query to REST service, make sure that we have this correct over here. We looked at other examples of calling in the information as well. And you're looking over here at, again, like an error handler where it's calling in the request object different. In this particular link that I'm showing up here, access SharePoint data from add-ins using the cross-domain library. This one shows the example of doing that piece. So let me scroll down here real quick. Sorry if it looks like it's going very, very fast, but I just want to get you to the point where here it is. It's doing a document ready. This is jQuery-ish, and it's getting the parameters and everything else, and it's doing a encode, decode, all this great fun stuff. And take a look. It actually has to find that thing that you saw, SP.RequestExecutor. Apparently, there was another step. It wasn't mentioned over there. Apparently, it's the case of once you assume that you have a setup and you're doing something all the time, you forget that others may not. So in this particular case, they said, here we go, the script base, get it over here, and now I'll run a get script where you're running essentially that script, and then you're calling a function once you have that script in hand. And of course, now they have the function, and here's the executor again, calling that item, and then we'll talk about that app web URL in just a moment. And then finally, it basically executes, and then it has a success handler, an error handler, and everything else. All right, so that seems straightforward. And there he is. All he's doing is just getting his items over here. So again, we're now back to the point where we're back to Suresh's original point, which was the refiner that was going to come in. All right, that's fine, great. So now we have that piece going. All right, what do we have left to do? Well, it seems okay. So let me look at this request executor object a little bit closer. I said because it's not working for me. What's going on? So it's saying over here exactly the same thing. There we go. Get script, bring it in, go fine. Okay, it seems all fine and well. But guess what? It didn't work. And why didn't it work? Okay, several things over here. The first thing that I found out that's for some reason in any of the code that I put in, and I tried different things. We tried putting in a JavaScript file on here as well, but we also did code online, a little code snippet, and I'll show you that in just a second here. Let's go page. Let's go to edit. I'm gonna go take a look at this in just a second. Look at this code, and I'll show you what's different. Let's go to edit one more time, shall we? Oh, it says loading. There we go, loading. Gotta wait, gotta be patient. This is the old classic page, not a modern page. In fact, I don't think this will work in a modern page. But anyways, this is also on the cloud. This is an Azure hosted SharePoint Live 2013 site. So this is not SharePoint, the latest version of SharePoint. So there wouldn't be a modern page here. All right, let's take a look at this again. Go into edit web part. Let's go edit my snippet. Okay, so here's how I put the code. Right up over here. All right, I'm going pretty fast on purpose just to show you this is what I'm trying to do. So basically, it didn't matter if I was doing this here, if I was doing a JavaScript, I was doing a JavaScript inject or anything else. The code that doesn't work never works for some reason, and I don't know why yet, but this get script always says this is an invalid method. Okay, first that didn't work. Next, of course, it couldn't seem to find this guy off the bat. So that's where I went back and looked at, oh, it looks like I have to load it first. Okay, so if I load this thing, then I can start make this stuff work. Well, okay, so get script wouldn't happen for me. So what did I end up doing over here? So first thing I did, well, let's see. On my little code over here, let me walk you through this little piece of code. I just created a message area where essentially I made a function that says to basically say what's going to happen. All right, I put an area where the results are going to go in. That's all fine and well. All right, and then what I did was I had to bring in jQuery manually, and I copied this from the jQuery CDN site, so I brought this in manually. There it is. There's my script code for the latest version of jQuery. I had to bring that in. All right, it's fine and well. All right, next thing I needed. Okay, that crazy request executor. It wasn't there, so I had to bring it in again. And here it is. All right. By the way, if you see any of this stuff blocked off or clouded, it's because this is an actual, let's just say this is part of our regular day job work. So we may have to hide a few things, essentially not to reveal our particular client. All right. And so there it is. So we know it's going to be _layouts 15. Well, it does say that pretty much in some of these other pieces over here, but I had to load it now in script because that crazy get script wouldn't load. All right, great, fine. So here's my reveal function over here. My reveal function, as you can see, I have search POC1. I had a regular search POC, which was somewhere else. Fine, because it wasn't running. I decided to put it over here where I could see it. So there's my function. Started. There's my jQuery-ish thing going on right up there, and messages. Let's go see this function. All right, so the first thing, of course, was to try to figure out what, and this is pretty huge and mostly blocked out over here, what this query text is going to look like. Because as you saw from some of the samples, which is right over here, basically you're going to have this kind of format for your query. All right, it's going to be long and involved. Okay, and in this particular case, it was very, very complicated. That didn't help, you know. So any kind of little fat fingering or mistakes over here would also fail. So a lot of this, of course, is being blocked out or covered in one sense or form. But just trust me, it's basically all there. And in the end, essentially, it had to have one and only one important thing, and I'll get to the back, and that is the refiners. This particular statement at the end had to be there. First, other thing I had to solve over here is making sure I had the right quotation marks in the right place. Okay, so what have I solved so far? Let me go quickly back. First, I solved, okay, getting jQuery in. Yeah, it's done. Next, I solved getting in SP.RequestExecutor to come in. Yep, there it is. Next, what did I solve next? Getting this crazy query text to be the right piece of text. All right. Okay, so here's one interesting thing. That refiner that you see over there, one last thing that has to be done. You actually have to set that up in SharePoint. You can't just go there and just make it work. Now, there's a refiner that's like, there's some free refiners that they give you off the bat. Like one of them is like size is what we tried it with first. But then we found out when we did size, it basically gave us everything. We had to go in and actually do something special for size to even work properly. In fact, the examples that they gave us, and let me go back to the Suresh mail here, the Suresh thing. He shows an example. It is an example. He has this nice little, look at this. Break it out, size, less than this, less than that. He didn't say that I actually had to go into refiners and actually set this up ahead of time. Because you don't get this for free either. He had here display author and everything else. Well, that didn't work for me either. Again, assumptions had to go back and say, assuming you have your refiner set up and you can do it manually and then you can do like a copy paste of the results over here, here's how to actually work it. And I think he was more concerned with showing how this code worked than he was with how to create a refiner. In our case, we had to get to the point where we had to get a refiner working in the first place. Because we didn't have that working, just made this more complicated. All right, let's go back. All right, so now we got that. So now we have our app web URL. Here it is. So here was the next thing over here. So I had this app web URL, and then I had, of course, here's what I'm looking for. I just put over here that I'm about to search this big query text, which is about to disappear anyway. All right, now I'm going to do that executor. There's my request executor, that app web URL. Now that app web URL, the next thing I made a mistake on was that I thought it was the entire query text slash together with the app web URL, because that's what he was doing again in his message, where he was basically combining. It looked like he was combining them. In actuality, he was not. I didn't look at it carefully. So, as you can see, this is not the query text. This is just simply the beginning, which they basically use SP context page info and a web absolute URL, basically to get the root. I could have just typed that in directly, which, by the way, I did later on because I just got tired of doing it. All right, in fact, here it is. Finally, you're doing that execute. The execute was essentially that web app URL plus that query text that's going in here. And again, I just pasted it in here just so I could quickly get it to work. I can always go back to it, but that's in there. All right, method get. Headers, that's the same as his. There's a success handler, there's the error handler. And on success. And then finally, I got his refinements thing to work. And there it is. Bringing in the JSON object to look at the results. Again, if there was a failure, if my refiner was a bad refiner, I would actually get an error here. And I never got to like no related text documents found. All right. For some reason, it never seems to go to that path. Basically, if a refiner is bad, the node is bad, and you get basically no object, and you get the error. But otherwise, here we go. It's just a refinement, just adding it up and bringing it together. So if I cancel out of here, let's go see how it runs. Let's go ahead and just save it and go away. Hopefully I didn't make any change. There's the script activity, so I click it. There, it's started, but take a look. So there was like the different categories. Not started, in preparation, review 5, and completed. Now, here's the next important thing about this. And there's going to be, again, a lot of blocking out on this. And this is the concept. See this refinement results right over here, this one line. If there was no refinements, my refinement was bad. All right, yeah, so by the way, I can just copy paste and put the item right up on top here. So I don't really need my script anymore. Now that I figured out how that was working, all right, that was working fine, I knew now what to look for on this side. As long as I get this to show up, refinement results, as to show up at the very least. Okay, it's going to give me some other items that are over here, but let's go down, scroll down a little bit. Again, some of this stuff will be blocked as we're going along. Trying to move slowly so I can keep up with it on the blocking if I need to. Here we go. There's my refiner. And that, it said there, it got this refiner, and here's my refiner entry. Next line over here, I'm using my mouse to point to it. And here's my first one. Not started, set to 485. And then we had to went to 35. Good. So I'll just say those numbers are correct. It's giving me the name of the refiner and everything else. So that's all good. The name of the refiner over here is blocked again because that's more proprietary for what we're using over here. Here was the next important thing. If I didn't do this right with query, I would actually have query results showing up over here. So let me do a duplicate of this tab for a second. And now I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to remove my refiner. Show you what it looks like without that refiner. And sure enough, there it is. All right, this time it just has relevant results. No more refiner over here. And as we see, we have tons of results that are coming in, but check it out. See, this properties now shows up with lots of stuff. Okay, there's some items over here. Now it's in relevant results. So these are actually the results that are showing up. The actual data is now coming through in this particular case. All right, so, and that's what we wanted to avoid. We wanted to avoid bringing in all the data. So we were able to prove that with refiners, we can bring in only the counts and not the data. Oh, what's the other piece here? There's one more piece, before I forget. And again, we're going to have a supplemental blog to this. But the next piece over here was this piece. Row limit equals 0. So that's, oh yes, let me remove that row limit right now. So we were looking at items over there, but I was incorrect a little bit. I'm going to remove that row limit. And I believe the default is 10. And here we go. Let's look at those REST results. Look how much bigger this is. See that? And I'm going very fast because there's proprietary data that's probably in here. But that's a lot more data. What you're looking at is the scroll bar on the side over here, which I'm focused on, and everything else is blocked out. But that's pretty much the case, what was happening before. So I set the row limit. Setting the row limit was one thing, but if I set it to 0, I can't really group anything or count anything. So several things I had to do, right? So one is row limit. The next one's put the refiner. The next thing I had to make sure that before I put the refiner, I had to set up the refiner ahead of time. And then finally, if I wanted to use some code, there was a whole bunch of steps that I had to use, at least for the original blog. So all those pieces that you just saw are literally all in different separate places. There's information how to do a refiner. In fact, that might even still be here. How to set up how to do the query to REST service. So a lot of these pieces are in here, short and sweet, and it's even showing over here like, oh look, RequestExecutor. They're just having trouble finding it online. Well, apparently it is still there. You just have to know how to call it up. And that gave me the clue on, okay, no matter where it is, you can still call it up that particular way. So that's what I did, but I brought it in. Okay, so let's see. Did we cover all our bases over here? We just wanted to get to this point where we're able to get groups of items. We want to make sure those groups of items came in only as a count and not the full group. We needed to make sure that we had a refiner set up ahead of time. We needed to make sure that we could call the item without bringing any items as well. So that was a row limit equals 0. And then as far as code's concerned, we had to bring in this case, jQuery in order to touch any of the UX pieces over here. We could probably have done straight up JavaScript with get element ID and all that stuff, but that's much easier. We had to bring in SP.RequestExecutor. What's our name again? SP.RequestExecutor.js to work as well. And then once we had that, we had to make sure that we have properly formed in our URL. And by the way, you still remember that decode, encode and all that stuff? I didn't use any of that. It was just a straight up, full query string. That same query string that you saw pasted up over here was literally copy pasted over there. And building the string, that was a little bit funky, by the way. So when I tried using that string, my problem again was I was trying to use the entire string and stick that as my parameter to it, request executor. Request executor only wants essentially the root, and then you add the query underneath it after you're inside. And by the way, after you're inside, you may or may not have visibility to stuff outside, so it's a JavaScript thing. And I believe that covers the entire stuff. Oh boy, about 20 minutes on my end here to record this. I don't think I'm speeding anything up on this one, but I am definitely blocking stuff out. Otherwise, that is it. That is the mini blog for now. Not exactly as long as our regular show, but long enough. All right, and now back to our regularly scheduled program. Talk to you guys soon.